Hey guys, it's Brian from Elite Start Training here. The video you're about to watch is the introductory video for our Basic Search Operations course. We recorded this last night during our first stream, and I really didn't do the intro very much justice. So I wanted to come back this morning and re-record an intro and put it in front of the video. So a big thank you to all those that attended the stream last night, and for those of you that watched the video afterwards. I really appreciate that. So please like and subscribe, and we'll continue to push content you guys' way. So thank you, and I hope you enjoy. Welcome to the Elite Start Training Basic Search Operations course. Okay. So the purpose and objectives of this course is to provide a search operator with fundamental knowledge and the basic skills required to search safely and effectively during a search and rescue mission. The objectives of the course are to introduce those the fundamental terminology, the tactics, and things to consider. We'll also discuss the tools and techniques designed to promote searcher safety, and then as we go along, whenever we roll this out into the actual program and get through the pilot, we'll reinforce the course curriculum with field exercises and activities. So I mentioned this before, but we incorporate a lot of ASTM standards, and on every slide that we hit and meet a requirement, I've got it on my side, the specific requirement marked. Eventually, we'll take this presentation and the notes that I have and eventually work our way into a book where that's referenced out. But as we go through this, bear in mind that this meets a lot of the ASTM standards for search and rescue. So what will you be able to do at the end of this training? So this training is designed to prepare you to participate as a ground searcher in an active search and rescue mission. Whenever I get into a basic level course, a first time brand new searcher, what I wanted to do is I want to get them prepared mentally for a 4 to 6 hour search assignment with the capability to sustain as long as 24 hours, which is about where a lot of search and rescue programs, they want you to end up is about be 24-hour mission ready. But if we focus on that 4 to 6 hour assignment, focus on doing that well, getting to that 24 hours is really a rinse and repeat model. So just getting able to get through to that 4 to 6 hour search assignment, we can get you to 24 hours after that. So in terms of the course itself, it's broken out into 8 different modules. There's a search and rescue overview, personal safety, the pre-assignment, search tactics, land navigation, track awareness, search conclusion, and then legal issues. All of these together are designed to introduce a new searcher to basic search operations and reinforce key search fundamentals for experienced searchers. We're covering 2 different audiences with this training. We're covering the brand new searcher that has never had a search and rescue class before, but also that search and rescue volunteer that has been around for a few years and they just want a refresher. This is going to help them as well with their refreshers. It primarily focuses on developing those competencies related to searching for lost or missing individuals. But in order to be a well-rounded search and rescue operator, I would really recommend you get out and do some quality rescue and quality medical training as well. Do some low-angle classes, do some wilderness first aid. Eventually, I would like to see Elite Start Training get to that point where we can have those as part of our offerings. But baby steps, we're going to get this program out there first and see where it goes. And we can help direct you to good people for that other stuff. As we get there, but right now this is where we're at, and with that, we're going to go ahead and start the search and rescue overview portion. Okay, so the overview of this module, guys, we're going to understand exactly what search means and what rescue means. We'll explain how search is an emergency, what it takes to be a SAR operator, and the expectations of being a SAR operator. Okay. Every search and rescue training I've ever done, whether at the state level, at the national level, they all start with this very basic understanding of what search and rescue is, and it's a compound term. It's not exclusively one or the other. It's locating, it's gaining access to, it's rendering appropriate care, and it's transporting a person in distress to a safe environment where additional care can be provided. It's all of the above. It's an and not an or. So whenever we say search and rescue. And my expectations of a search and rescue operator is they are able to at least touch all four of those items as we go through here. It's not exclusively locating, but it's also making sure that we deliver them to a safe location. Sometimes it's not search and rescue. Sometimes it's search and recovery, depending on the mission that we're on, and the information that we have ahead of time. We may know ahead of time that it may not necessarily be a rescue, but a recovery. So, in order to achieve this, you should, at a minimum, specialize in locating missing individuals, but also be able to provide enough medical care to sustain a victim until more qualified care is on scene, or the victim is capable of safely evacuating without more qualified care. So they're able to walk out on their own, or we're able to hold them over until the cavalry arrives. Okay. So why is search an emergency? This is one of these. Whenever you read a lot of search and rescue books, they talk about the crucials of search and rescue, and one of the very early on ones they always throw out there is search is an emergency, and there's a number of reasons why search is an emergency, and these are four of a list of many. The victim may need emergency care. They may need protections from themselves, the environment, protection from a precarious situation. They may only be responsive for a short amount of time. It's an emergency because we may only have a short amount of time before they are no longer responsive, and that makes our job as searchers much more difficult. And obviously their life is really in danger at that point. Time and weather would destroy clues for us, and we'll talk about in future modules about how people are clue generators. But even then, time and weather wreak so much havoc on clues and destroy them that search is an emergency, because if we don't get started while those are there, our job becomes much more difficult. And then that leads into the fourth bullet, that a prolonged response becomes less effective. Many people do not realize the urgency that's required to greatly increase the chances of a successful life find, and including many first responders, unfortunately. Think about searches, for those of you that have been on searches before, I'm sure you've seen it where family and friends, they may spend hours searching on their own before they call emergency services, or for whatever reason, they may think that search and rescue is a paid service, and so they push off calling because they feel like that they're going to have to pay for the service. And whenever initial responders do arrive on scene, they may not understand the complexity of the event that they're walking in on, and they may even attempt to search on their own without having that specialized training or knowledge. And the worst part of all of this is, even though all of these folks are well-intended friends, family, those initial responders, what they are doing that they aren't aware of is that they can be destroying those valuable clues that cannot be reproduced. Once a clue is gone, it's gone. So as time goes on, they dissipate on their own naturally through the environment. But whenever we start to swarm an area with untrained people, we start to destroy those clues, and they cannot be reproduced. Every minute that someone is not located, the further away rescue can be. This could be because the victim is moving away from potential help, but really overall, the complexity of the situation it begins to compound very, very quickly. Okay, that's why search is an emergency. So if you're brand new to search and rescue, or you're potentially interested, or it's something you may you're intrigued about, you want to know more about, and you decide you want to take the leap and get involved, there's a lot of good reasons to get involved in search and rescue, and the your motives for being here can widely vary. Okay, and I've seen both sides of the spectrum, where some folks have pure intentions, while others may be a little bit more self-serving in their involvement. So I always kind of preface this because as I said, I've seen it both ways, where there's some people that are there for social media likes. I have seen searchers abuse their position and be only involved in search and rescue, be a member of an organization so they can get a first responder discount. I've seen that as well. Shed my jacket here real quick, get it warm in here. I've seen a number of folks go out and relive some glory days. You know, maybe they spent some time in the scouts, they spent some time in the service, maybe even on another search and rescue team. Either way, they're more interested in their own ego or their own pride than they are the mission. And I've seen people that they are just there to look cool, to get the T-shirt, to get the patch, to put the decals on their car. If this is where your motivations lie, then this volunteer activity is not for you. This is not the place where you want to be at. In search and rescue, and this often gets lost because they're not traditionally viewed as a true first responder, but we are representing a life-saving organization, and we are out there to potentially help someone in need. So if you're not there to save lives, then really you don't have much business being there. If this is where your motivations are, but if you are here to ease the pain and suffering of others, to put others before yourself, or to be the true example of community service, then you're in the right place. It's more, search and rescue is more than someone's hobby or weekend activity. And I have been to plenty of trainings on Saturday morning where we roll up, we pull out our lawn chairs, and we sit around and we don't really train to the missions that we're on, and it becomes more of a club, right? It's not a club. It's not something that should ever be treated lightly. Whenever a good organization or someone that really takes search and rescue seriously, they're constantly challenging themselves. We're on a life-saving mission, and our mission is to ease the pain and suffering of others. It requires continued sacrifice to others, ongoing skill refinement, and discipline to remain focused on the task at hand. That's what we're here for. So if you're in it for more of it's something for me to do on Saturdays, this is not really the volunteer activity for you. Okay. So whenever we talk about what does it take to become a successful search operator, it's a combination of a few things. It's about character, dedication, courage, and integrity. And over the next few pages, we'll dive each into one of these bullets a little bit more in detail. So one of the questions that you should ask yourself if you're on the fence, or you're maybe brand new to search and rescue, or if you've been in for a while and it's time for you to maybe be a little bit honest with yourself, ask the question, am I willing to make the commitment? You're expected to look and operate professionally at all times, and that requires you to make personal commitments to achieve this mission. Another question you can ask yourself is, are you willing to get up in the middle of the night and venture out into the pouring rain to render aid to someone you've never met? That could very well be a scenario that you have. Search and rescue missions are frequently conducted at very inconvenient times. I remember I've been on searches on Father's Day before. I've gone out and found an individual on my daughter's birthday. It's very rarely you're going to be asked to participate in a mission on that beautiful Saturday morning where you just don't have anything else to do. Your family is occupied otherwise. Very rarely does that ever happen. So it can be very inconvenient from that perspective. But is that a commitment you're willing to make? Another commitment to really think about is the financial commitment. And this is something that's not really talked about a whole lot in the volunteer search and rescue world, but it's certainly a very large impact on some people. Many search and rescue teams are volunteer organizations that have very little financial support. They may have a very small budget. They likely cannot provide a whole lot of clothing or materials or equipment to their team members. So that may be something you may be on the hook for, if you're to make sure you're getting quality clothing and the equipment that you need to get through. That may be something that you have to take on, and that's a commitment that you're going to have to consider. Are you willing to take that financial commitment? Another question you need to ask yourself is, am I willing to maintain a state of readiness? That should be of readiness. Let's mark that one down. Slide 11. You're going to get a lot of that, guys, because I'll be honest with you, typing is, I would consider myself an average typer at best, so you're going to see a lot of this. But are you willing to maintain a state of readiness and ability to respond? It can be very demanding work. Search and rescue can. It really depends on what role you end up taking. I mean, if you're choosing to be an operator where you're out in the field, you could be asked to hike several miles over rugged terrain, and just whenever you get to the end of the trail there, find yourself delivering round and round of CPR whenever you get there. So the physical demand of that role that you have, not every job is going to require that level of physical exertion. There's typically a job just about anywhere for anybody to participate in the mission, but it's still really important, even if you're in the command post, that you are able to meet the physical demands of your assigned task. That's very important for you to be there. And to couple on top of that, are you mentally prepared for it? Because you're going to be mentally prepared for the unfavorable conditions in night, extreme weather. You may be going along working one day. I remember there was one time I was on the phone call at work with a senior vice president as I was getting a call for a search, and so trying to shift from where I'm at mentally engaging this leader within an organization to now all of a sudden I need to go save a life. It's something you have to be mentally prepared for. At the end of a long day, whenever you're ready to check out, get ready to go to bed, sometimes that's whenever the phone rings. Okay, just being mentally prepared for that. And if you're not, it's okay. You just have to really be honest with yourself about what you can commit to. Maybe you're not the type of person that can respond at night. Maybe there's other ways you can contribute elsewhere. So just be honest with yourself, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later. And then being mentally prepared to see things that can and most likely will disturb you. Those outcomes are not always happy outcomes. And sometimes searches will take a very unexpected turn, and they can really be emotionally taxing. So it's totally normal to be moved emotionally by a situation, but that's an outcome that you have to accept at the beginning of the mission. That is a potential outcome. The good thing is there's plenty of people that have lived through that before, and we're always there for each other to make sure that we can kind of work through a really tough situation together. But that's a state of readiness that you have to be ready for. Are you willing to dedicate the time to acquire and maintain those skills needed to fulfill your role? Especially in the field or really anywhere in search and rescue operations, we need to be prepared to make those snap decisions with those situations in front of us. That muscle memory. Okay, so in order to keep that, we have keep that ability to make good decisions. That comes with training and continual skill refinement. I mentioned this earlier, but are you willing to go out and seek quality training that goes out above the bare minimum? A lot of folks, they think that whenever they do a basic or entry level class, they think that that's it. They've met their hours, they have met the bare minimum requirement, and they are now fully qualified for whatever mission. And that's not necessarily always the case. And even the most experienced search and rescue operators should spend quite a bit of time in the classroom or training or studying to make themselves better, just so that way you're continually sharpening that saw. The same thing goes with your certifications. If you are, certified for rescue or certified for medical, making sure that you are keeping those up as you go along. You don't want to have a long expired CPR or first aid out there. Just making sure that you're willing to dedicate that time to maintain that certification. And then the same thing with your training. If you're willing to attend team training sessions, motivate yourself to train independently. Those are things that you're going to have to commit to, and dedicate that time to make sure that that your ongoing training is kept up, so that way you're ready to respond, and you're working on that proactive training regimen development. So another question: are you willing to conduct yourself in a manner that reflects positively on other SAR professionals? Think about how people react in stressful situations, and how you come off to other individuals. And whenever you put on the uniform and you put on the hat, what does the community see in your organization through your actions? Those are things that that you need to put in front of your own desires, your own agendas or egos, and maintain that professional presence, protecting that integrity of the SAR industry. Are you willing to work as a team and work within the boundaries of the team guidelines? I've seen a number of people that have been well experienced over the years, and they think that they have the right to operate in their own set of guidelines and their own set of procedures, which obviously does not bode well for your own personal leadership of others. So something to consider as well as you're going through this is, even though you may bring a wealth of knowledge or have that experience on a team, you there's really not a position there for you to kind of go into business for yourself. Even whenever look at like team rules and guidelines, they can be frustrating, especially whenever you have poor leadership at the top, and you may find yourself very tempted to skirt those rules, but you really must discipline yourself to work within the boundaries to protect that integrity of the team. Those rules and guidelines are designed to live beyond the person occupying a leadership position or whatever. So sticking to that to preserve the integrity of the team. And then lastly, one of the last questions you have to ask, and this is a tough one for some, but are you willing to be honest with your abilities? We emphasize a lot in search and rescue classes to not contribute any additional harm to a situation. Being honest in your abilities is paramount, and you're encouraged to speak up if you're not capable of performing a task. There's absolutely no shame in honesty. Doing a lot of self evaluation, doing a lot of reflection. This is really imperative to maintain a healthy mindset. If you're not willing to self evaluate and bring yourself back on track, then this profession will find a way to embarrass and humble you very, very quickly. If you can contribute nothing else to a search effort, at least do not contribute any additional harm. If you can't do something, it's okay. We'll find another way to get it done. If you're physically unable to or you're mentally not ready, that's okay. We will find a way to work around it and still work as a team to achieve the goal. And then again, I mentioned earlier just the physical and mental help that you may need as you go along. The longer you stay in this, the more likely you're going to sustain some form of injury that's going to leave you that can leave you hurt long term, or you're going to see something that scars you mentally. Be able to recognize your limits and know when it's time for you to take a step back and get that help that you need. And there's nothing more painful to watch than to watch another teammate not know when they need to back away and seek help, which I've unfortunately seen a few times. So we're closing in on the last few slides here on this initial overview, and I'm watching the stream over here, and I'm very excited to see the numbers we have, and I appreciate you guys listening to me stutter through this. And this is really awkward for me, just because I'm used to teaching to a live audience. So I hope you guys are hanging in there with me, but I promise we're getting there. So what does a search manager expect from you on every single mission? This is one of these things that I really haven't seen in a whole lot of other search and rescue trainings that I've been a part of, but this is a very important thing, I think, for a new person and someone that's been around for a while. Just having a quick level set again on expectations. And as a search manager, I've managed many searches. These are things that whenever I would expect out of anyone to respond on my team, and that the people you have arrived prepared to contribute to the team's efforts. Whenever you show up, you've left whatever issues you've had at the door. You're able and in the mindset to contribute to the team's efforts, not your own individual agendas or anything like that. You're there for the team. You've done your part to prepare mentally and physically for your task. And this goes back into the commitment that we talked about earlier. You've done your part to lead up to now is the time for us to go and to find somebody. So what have you done to mentally and physically prepare yourself for your job? You conduct yourself in a manner that reflects positively on the team and is appropriate for the situation. You understand what the situation is, the levity of it, and you're willing to do whatever it needs to reflect positively on the team and look professional and cohesive. You know your limitations and you're willing to not accept a task that's beyond the scope of your physical ability, your training, or your mental state. This is probably the biggest thing that as a search manager that I do expect. This is certainly an expectation. I need you to tell me no. I need you to tell me whenever I am asking you that this is something you can't do, you're not willing to do. I expect you to know you to tell me that, because in my mind as a search manager, I'm trying to connect people to tasks, to objectives, and I'm going off of the sign-in sheet that I'm working on that day. So if the task I have for you, I usually have a pretty good idea whenever I see the roster and who's there on who can do what. But if it's something that I've come to you and it said, hey, I need you to do this, I need you to be able to tell me no. And that's happened to me a couple of times on a search, and I certainly hold no one hold it against no one. If it's something they're not able to do, I want them to tell me, because I don't want them to contribute harm. I don't want them to hurt themselves. At the end of the day, we all go home safe. That's my job as manager. And then you exercise patience while that search plan is being developed. Early on in a search, anybody that's ever been on a search, there's a lot of just absolute chaos, uncertainty, misinformation, lack of information that goes in, that's all happening while we're trying to figure out what we're going to do. So exercise patience while we're trying to figure that part out is really something I expect. We all want to get there. We all want to start contributing. We all want to get busy. But exercise a little bit of patience there. And then what can you expect from a search manager? So now this is me flipping it around and talking to you as an operator. And whenever you engage your leadership on your team, this is what you can expect from them. And this is what I would hold other search managers to. Anyone that's in charge of any component of a search, that you should do for your team. First of all, the search manager should appreciate your attendance. They should appreciate the fact that you took time away from your family, took time away from your job or your rest or whatever, to show up and contribute. A lot of us are volunteers. There are plenty of other things that we can be doing with our time and our money. So the fact that you have chosen to spend it here, if I cannot convey that verbally or show it to you, then I have not done my job as a manager. I should not put you in a situation that deviates greatly from established team guidelines or puts you in a mentally or physically compromising situation. So I want to highlight that real quick, and this is one of the cool things that we can do. That we can do here is we can do some little doodling on the slides here. There are going to be times in certain situations where we're deviating from existing, guidelines or the way we've always done things. There are some times where that's necessary. That's something we're going to have to do to get the job done, to meet the urgency of the situation. It's going to happen. That's why they're called guidelines. But as a search manager, I should understand that the guidelines should be the norm, and whenever you have something that deviates, that's the exception. It should not be the rule. Okay, so if I choose to deviate from the guideline, I should make sure that as you, the operator, I'm not putting you in a spot that's going to compromise you physically. It's going to have cause some kind of a safety issue for you, or mentally. It's going to put you in a position that you have told me that you don't want to be in. So from a search manager perspective, that's something that I need to be cognizant of. Okay, that's something that I need to understand, and if I choose to deviate, I need to understand what those boundaries are. Okay, and as a search operator, you've conveyed that to the search manager already. You've already conveyed that. Now it's time for me to say, okay, I understand. I'm not going to do this. I can't do this with you, and it's fine. We're going to find out. We're going to figure out another way around it. The search manager keeps you informed without compromising mission confidentiality. This is another big one, guys, because whenever we get on scene, and whenever we get on scene, and everyone is getting ready, they're not sure what's going on. The plan is still being developed. There's a lot of information that is coming into the command post, and it may sometimes feel like there's not a lot of information going out. And as a search manager, there are times where I have to intentionally withhold some information from conveying it to the team, because there may be a wrinkle to it that either is unconfirmed, or if I leak it, it may change the way that it may change the way that I need them to respond in the field. It's not always the most comfortable position, withholding that information, but sometimes it's necessary. So my job as a search manager is to give you the information that you need, give you the information that you want, up to the point of I really can't disclose that information any further. It's either compromising to the victim, it's compromising to the mission. I've given you everything that I can give you, and that's something, as a search operator you need to respect. But as a search manager, it's my job to keep you informed. Okay, that's one of my jobs as well, is to make sure you have the information that you need up to that point of, okay, we got to put a pause on it. Okay, the search manager listens to your needs and your concerns. They listen, they understand, they're empathetic. That's something you should expect of your search. That's something you should expect of your search manager. And then the search manager is qualified to lead and exercises the appropriate couth to lead. There's two components of that, but they both deal around leadership. And sometimes we don't always get to pick who the leader is whenever we start at an organization, or whenever we work with another organization. We don't always have the ability to pick who's leading. But one of the two things that we should always be able to expect is they are qualified to be in that position, and then they exercise that appropriate level of professionalism that it takes for them to be a leader. That's something that you should expect out of your search manager. Pretty slick, huh? Like the pen's pretty slick. To round out the slides here tonight, and this is another one that I like to throw in, or I like to discuss at some point, is because I see a lot of brand new searchers immediately want to rush into getting a specialty. They want to be able to provide a special service onto a team. And I've got mixed feelings on it. So that's why whenever I title this as what does a good, well-rounded SAR operator career progression, it's just that. It's if you were to do it right and you were to be well-rounded, this is what it would look like. Sometimes it's if you have someone that's exceptionally talented, or they have there's a need on a team to develop this right away. Sometimes it makes a lot of sense to jump straight to that, or to bring that on board. But if you were to have go onto a team that's been around, established, and you're wanting to break into this the right way, you would spend about the first year that you're there operating as a ground searcher, just getting an understanding of what search and rescue is. Get a few missions under your belt as a ground searcher, and then you move into a team leader, or a rapid responder, someone who you've got some experience, you've gathered some equipment, you have a good feel for how searching is done and should be done. You roll into that more of that supervisor role at that point. And then after that, you can really start to branch out into specialities. And I think if you went through that progression, by the time you got to be a specialized resource, you'll have a fantastic handle on the situation, understand exactly what's expected of anyone that walks in on a search, and you can contribute at multiple levels. So this is what I think a good, well-rounded career progression looks like. It may cause a little bit of a controversy. Some people may disagree. There may be instances where it makes sense for you to come in specialized resource, but in my experiences, I would much rather have everybody trained as a ground searcher first, just because as we get into this later on in the program, you'll see the resources that are required to really pull off a good ground search is a lot, and that's something that everybody should be trained at. So that brings us to the end of the first slide deck. This is just the overall slide deck. If we were doing this at a basic search and rescue class, we would get up and take a break and move on to the next module. But in this format that I'm rolling out, this is where we would call it a night. Thank you guys again for watching the video, and for those of you that participated in the stream, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Again, remember to like and subscribe, and be on the lookout for us whenever we start posting additional content. Thank you.